Welcome to Business Voice, a program of the Greece Regional Chamber of Commerce. Each month, we'll feature business and community leaders sharing their stories, initiatives, concerns, and passions. Learn practical information regarding community resources and opportunities. Now, the host of Business Voice, Greece Regional Chamber President and CEO, Sarah Lentini.
Hi, everybody. You're listening to Business Voice, a program of the Greece Regional Chamber of Commerce, sponsored by Bartolomeo and Parado Funeral Home. I'm Sarah Lentini, your host, and we've got a wonderful show for you today, starting with my first guest, Dr. Adina Jucan of Adena Family Dental Care. Welcome, Dr. Jucan.
Hello, how are you doing? I'm happy to be here with everybody, all your listeners.
Yeah, we're delighted that you're here, and we're especially delighted because yours is a relatively new business, is it not?
Yes, I bought this practice last year in February, and I'm very happy that I did because I have a wonderful team and I have amazing patients. And so, yes, absolutely.
That's great. And you're located right in the town of Greece. Let's tell everybody where the practice is located, Adena Family Dental.
So we are located at 1101 English Road here in Greece. And we have a nice location, very, very easy to get in. We have a good amount of parking spots. So, yes, we are located in Greece.
Yep, and I've been there. It is indeed very easy. Pull right in, park right in front of the office, and walk right in. And you've got a great staff, nice big office. And I know that you guys have lots of great protocols in place right now in order to make people feel very, very comfortable with the COVID-19 pandemic, right? You've got everything very spaced out, very clean. Do you want to speak to that a moment?
So with the COVID, we took this very seriously, and we tried to, and obviously we follow all the recommendations that CDC and New York State Department of Health put in place. We have our sneeze guard up front, so when you enter in, the girls up front will be separated, unfortunately, through the sneeze guard, but that's going to be safe, so that's a good thing.
Right.
We have a protocol for patients who would need to call us when they arrive in the parking lot, and then we're going to take the temperature, make sure that they respond to the COVID questionnaire, and then they're going to be invited into the rooms, either in my operatory when they need some dental work or with a hygienist. We also use very, very high-level, level 3 medical gowns, washable gowns that basically can be used in burn units. So every time when we see a patient, we change the gown and we wash everything in-house. So we had to do washer, dryer, and wash everything in-house, including our scrubs. Mm-hmm. And yes, we do wear scrubs, including my front desk. I know they don't look too nice, but I prefer to protect my patients and, protect my staff and our families too.
Yep.
We also have air purifiers in all our operatories, at the front desk, in the hygiene rooms, in our rooms. Again, we took this very, very seriously, and we want everything and everybody to be very, very safe, and all the procedures to be done safely.
That's great. Nothing wrong with that, and better even if you went a little bit above and beyond what's required. I think that's going to make your patients feel that much happier and more comfortable in your office, so kudos to you. So you started the practice, you said, last February?
Yes.
And you purchased a practice from someone else?
I purchased a practice from Dr. Barletta, and I'm very grateful that he built up this wonderful practice over many years, and I'm very grateful that he also was my faculty over my residency at Eastman Dental. So not only that I purchased a good dentistry habit, but I also purchased a wonderful practice.
Oh, yeah. In fact, Dr. Dan Barletta is indeed, very well known throughout Greece and beyond, and also very active in the community. And I think you connected and with a wonderful dentist, as you already know, and in a great practice and a great location, as we were saying earlier. And you just mentioned what I wanted to bring up next, which is Eastman Dental. That's where you were clinical director at Eastman Dental, were you not?
Yeah. So I trained with Eastman Dental. In 2009, I started my training, and then I did my residency and my fellowship in geriatric dentistry there. And then I decided to stay on board as a faculty. And at one point, I was appointed the clinical director of Eastman Dental Clinic at Highland Hospital. We built a wonderful clinic there. My focus was geriatric dentistry, geriatric patients, which I love to do, but I like to treat any kind of, and any age of, I like dentistry. I love dentistry. And so, but that was my focus, and until I decided to move on to the private practice, I was the clinical director for that clinic.
That sounds fantastic. And, of course, Eastman Dental has a great reputation, great history, great reputation in the community. So you're coming from a terrific place. And I think it's important for people to realize that you've got lots of wonderful experience, lots of fantastic education experience. So you mentioned geriatric dentistry. I have to confess to you, I didn't even know there was such a specialty. So are there a lot of different specialties in dentistry? Is it sort of geriatric dentistry and everything else, or are there others?
So geriatric dentistry is not a specialty just yet. According to American Dental Association, we have a fellowship, and dentists who are interested in treating, older adults with more compromised medical history, they can go through this fellowship, and it was an amazing opportunity for me because I train with geriatric medicine fellows, and so it was a very interactive opportunity for me to learn not only the dental part but also the medical part. So I was one of the lucky ones. In dentistry, there are recognized specialties, as in prosthodontics, which is taking care of making dentures and crowns and bridges. Periodontics, who's focusing on gum disease, implants, stuff like that. Endodontics, who's doing root canals. I know a lot of people don't like those, but if you have a good specialist, right, that's going to do a great job.
Yeah, it may not hurt, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And these days, root canals became more comfortable, if we can call it that, procedure because the progress that's happening in endodontics is phenomenal. We also have all the surgical specialties in oral surgery. We have anesthesiology, we have oral pain, but just now, geriatric dentistry is not yet a specialty. We are hoping in the future.
That's what I was going to say.
Because I think that we are at the other spectrum of pediatric dentistry, and I think it's going to be a huge need, especially with baby boomers. I definitely think that we'll find a need for geriatric dentists.
Yeah, and people are actually keeping their own teeth longer and longer, so I could see how this would really be an area of tremendous need. So you mentioned all those wonderful fields. So when somebody comes to Adena Family Dental, do they get, what sort of services do you offer, and do any of them, overlap with any of the fields that you just mentioned, any of the specialties?
Yes, I try to create a space for our patients where they will have as many options as possible. So we brought in a endodontist, and so all the root canals are done in-house. We also brought in a periodontist, so everything that's related to gums, implants, everything what's related to bone grafting is done in-house as well.
Wow.
And also wisdom teeth extractions, everything like that we'll do now in-house.
So that's huge. And I didn't realize there are several dentists or dentists with a variety of specialties that are all under the Adena Family Dental umbrella then.
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, I'm trying to make this like a one-stop shop for my patients, although I don't see as shopping. I'd like to keep everything under the same roof because it's easier for me to treatment plan the cases and to plan all those cases while the specialist is here. We look at the x-rays, we'll look at the CBCTs, and we just plan the case. It's so much easier for everybody.
That's great. In case you're just joining us, you're listening to Business Voice, a program of the Greece Regional Chamber of Commerce, sponsored by Bartolomeo and Parado Funeral Home. I'm Sarah Lentini, your host, also the president of the Greece Regional Chamber of Commerce, and I'm talking with Dr. Adina Jucan, who is the owner and the owner of an old and a new dental practice, right? A dental practice that is now under new ownership and management, Adena Family Dental. which is on English Road, correct, in the town of Greece, and is sounding very full service and sophisticated. I'm learning as we go. I thought I already knew, what services you offered, but they're actually pretty expansive. So, is there a vision that you have for the practice as you move forward, or are there things that you're looking to get accomplished? I mean, this is such an odd year, of course, an odd period of time. One big accomplishment might just be getting beyond COVID-19, but are there things that you're looking to do in the next year that maybe our listeners would be interested in?
Definitely, I'd like to be involved more in the community and get to learn the community of Greece. I'm from Webster. I live in Webster. Mm-hmm. But I'm discovering that people of Greece are wonderful, very, very welcoming, very warm. And so one thing that I'd like to do more is get involved in the community. In fact, this year in November the 25th, we're going to have a Give a Child a Smile Day.
Oh, nice.
And we encourage all the parents who'd like their kids to have a free consultation and a free cleaning to come. It's going to be an all-day event. And like I said, I'd like to get involved in the community. And we wanted to start with children because I know it's very important from the very early age to have good dentition, good teeth. And so that's going to be something that we'd like to promote and have, people have access to. And then in the future, we are definitely looking into the Chamber of Commerce, who gracefully and wonderfully started to support us, to give us some other ideas about how can we support our community.
Yeah, I should have said thank you first and foremost for joining the Greece Regional Chamber of Commerce. We're delighted to have you as a new business member, and we're looking forward at some point in the future at being able to do some live events with you, especially to really celebrate your being new on the scene in the Greece business community. And we're looking forward to partnering with you to help promote the business more. But you already have this great event, and it's November 25th?
Yes. It's going to be the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I know a lot of schools are not getting kids in on Wednesdays. They do either remote, classes, or before Thanksgiving, usually schools are closed. Kids are taking a little vacation. So if parents are interested, definitely we are waiting for them to come, learn our office, meet the staff. I have a wonderful, wonderful team. I cannot thank enough God for giving me these wonderful ladies who are part of our team. And, have a good day with us and have some good experience here.
Terrific. Before I let you go, one last thing. If people are interested and they want to learn more, what's your web address? How do they get to you?
So we have our web address. It's www.adenafamilydentalcare.com. We just renewed that. We made it more attractive. I felt like it wasn't interactive enough. We started a blog where we try to put information about different subjects that I feel are important for our patients. And we also have our Facebook page where they can find information about our team, about our procedures, about the location and stuff like that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's great. We're delighted that you've been on the show. We're looking forward to having you back and also to doing some events as the region continues to reopen. Dr. Adina Jucan, I know many of your patients call you Dr. Adina, so if I may, Dr. Adina, thank you so much for being on Business Voice today. Dr. Adina of Adena Dental Care. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Don't go away. We're going to be right back with my next guest, David Michael Berry Jr., one of the candidates for the 56th District of the New York State Senate.
The loss of a loved one can be an overwhelming time of hectic activity and high emotion. Remembering and celebrating the lives of those who have passed is important and fulfilling. A meaningful farewell, focusing on their life story, can help with healing. Some families turn to the clergy at their church to capture the essence of a person's life. However, those who may not be connected with the church may worry there is no one to fulfill this important role. At Bartolomeo in Parado, we believe that a life remembered lives on. One of our trained trained funeral celebrants can help you thoughtfully design and organize your loved one's treasured memories and ensure that the story of their life is not forgotten. Discover how you can create a meaningful farewell. Visit Bartolomeo.com or call us today at 585-720-6000.
From coast to coast, from the Great Lakes to the Gulf. At Spectrum Reach, we make local businesses big and big brands look local. With the best content, insights, products, and people. Be on every screen with that one idea you need to turn a consumer into your customer. We're the most trusted media partner in America. And we're also your neighbors. Welcome to Spectrum Reach. Let us show you around the neighborhood. Grow your business. Go to SpectrumReach.com to get started.
WYSL.
Welcome back. You're listening to Business Voice, a program of the Greece Regional Chamber of Commerce, sponsored by Bartolomeo and Parado Funeral Home. I'm Sarah Lentini, your host, also the president of the Greece Regional Chamber, and it's my great pleasure to welcome our next guest, David Michael Berry Jr., who is one of the candidates for the 56th District of the New York State Senate. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for giving all four names.
You're very welcome. And I had to think about it. You heard that pause. I had to think about what I was going to call you, because with David Michael Berry Jr., people may even be wondering, why am I calling him Mike? But that is the name that you go by most often, is it not?
Yeah, it's just how I was introduced. My grandfather owned and ran Crescent Beach for decades and decades in the town of Greece, and when people would come in, he would introduce me as Mike Jr. because that's what he named his my father, one of his 6 kids. He got to name the middle names. My grandmother got to choose the first names. So for 71 years, he called my dad, by his first name, and I've inherited that junior part of it. So I accept it proudly, Mike Jr.
I imagine it's confusing at the Thanksgiving table. That's all I got to say.
Well, at least they're saying, Mike, here's some stuffing. Mike, here's some turkey. That's okay with me.
Oh, yeah, that would be good with me as well. So you have indeed lived in the town of Greece a long time, right? And you've had a history and a career in the town of Greece and in Monroe County that are probably pretty relevant to the seat that you're running for right now.
Yeah, I've been proud to be a Greece native and in Greece almost all my life, except for a tour where I was teaching out near the city of Syracuse for a couple of years, a place called Onondaga High School. Loved it out there. Yeah. And I also taught at a place called Spencerport High School that everyone knows that's listened to your program. So I enjoyed my time as a teacher, and I've been fortunate to be a council person in the town of Greece for the last 7 years. We've done some great work out there. Supervisor Riley, my fellow town board members. We've really done some great things. Yesterday, matter of fact, we just broke ground on a new portion of the public library. It should be a great state-of-the-art for our young folks, our youth, to come in and use it. I for whatever reason, I've always enjoyed working with youth. And the 7 years I spent as the executive director for the County Youth Bureau were 7 wonderful years, very rewarding. Created a lot of great initiatives here for the community, worked with a lot of organizations, got to reach across the aisle and work with several folks. And you were at the Commerce launch a couple of days ago. And what a great event that was. It was great to be with everybody.
Well, thank
seeing you and
there.
Everyone in the group. It was an awesome event. But, I worked with a lady by the name of Elaine Spall, who's a former city council person
at
the Center for Youth. And we put together that Safe Harbor program that finds and rescues and gets resources for the youth that have been sex trafficked here in Monroe County. Found over 1,200 youth that were victims.
That's unbelievable. I think we hear about sex trafficking of youth or even adults, and I think we're horrified, but we figure that it's happening in some other community, and it's just overwhelming and distressing to think that there's this much sex trafficking happening right here in Monroe County, because that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, it happens in every town, the city of Rochester, and it happens, unfortunately, throughout the entire state. And until we brought focus to it in 2012 as a county, there were only 36, I think it was 36 known cases throughout New York State in 2011. 2012 comes around, we put the program in place, we found over 200 youth. And you fast forward 7 years, we ended up finding over 1,200 that were red tagged as sex trafficked victims in Monroe County. And I really have to credit the good folks at the Center for Youth. I mean, if you haven't heard of them, any of your listeners haven't heard of them, please look them up. They do phenomenal work in our county with runaway homeless youth and obviously those that have been abused and those who have been trafficked with this awful plague on our children.
Yeah. And Elaine Spall has been at the helm for many years now, right? And
she's got a phenomenal passion to help youth. And she's one of the best individuals I have ever met and worked with in government. She's just a phenomenal person.
And she's somebody who also has sort of a history and some experience in the political arena. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, she was a former city council person.
Yeah.
She whatever she does, she puts full passion behind it, enthusiasm, and gives it her all. And she's just one of the people that I admire and look to as a mentor, both in working in government and just in service in life.
Yeah, I think that's terrific. And I brought it up in part, Elaine's past political life, because she would represent, I think, an example of your, in essence, reaching across the aisle to work with somebody who may not be of your party, but is somebody who shares your values, especially on this issue. Does that sound like a fair assessment?
Oh, absolutely. And, she and I probably wouldn't agree on many political issues. But when it came to serving our youth, it's amazing what you can do. You put down whatever differences you have and say, how can we solve this issue? How can we solve this problem? And focus on that one issue. Because, there's always something you can find common ground with someone. Yep. It doesn't matter what you oppose on other sides. Let's focus on what we can do and what we can agree upon. What common ground do we have, and what can we do to push forward our community? And, that one government program is a phenomenal instance where you can look at it. Because it's not just she and I that did it. There were dozens of organizations, law enforcement, state and federal, where everyone did that. Could you imagine if we were all acting like that, Sarah? I mean, throughout our community and our nation, if we just put those differences aside and said, what can we agree on and what can we solve together?
Yeah. And if we can't agree on basic issues like keeping our kids safe, then we're really in trouble. But it has gotten to the point where people do tend to disagree, right? But people tend to disagree more than they agree. So it's great to hear that that this is an issue that so many people have come together on in an effective way. As you were talking, something else that struck me is that often people hear, often people think about statistics and when they hear that numbers are going up, they think it's a bad thing, but it isn't always a bad thing. You were just citing an example of where suddenly, as more attention was paid in this community and others to the issue of sex trafficking, the statistics started to go up. The number of young people that were identified as having been sex trafficked went up, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the instances were going up. It meant that we were doing a better job of actually identifying them, and that's really what you were pointing out a minute ago. I thought it was actually a very important thing to point out. In a past life, I worked with statistics and became very aware of the fact that an increase in the number of reports isn't always an increase in the actual event itself. And an increase in the number of reports could mean that we're actually doing a better job of reporting instances of abuse, neglect, domestic violence, things that maybe at some points in our past we haven't been great about reporting. So kudos to you for getting involved in this issue and working with a team that's been as effective as it has. Now, talk to us a little bit about the 56th district of the New York State Senate. What exactly is the district? What are the boundaries? And then we could talk a little bit about the role of a senator.
Sure. So, it obviously includes the town of Greece where I live, but it also has Brighton, Gates, the northern portion of the city with Charlotte and the Maplewood areas. We have you stretch it all the way west to Clarkson. So, it's a large district, very diverse district. You have lots of businesses. You have the lakefront. You have so many things that encompass the district that you've got to have a very good knowledge of who's in your district. And not just the boundaries, but what that includes. What businesses are there? What about the lakefront? And, being on the town board, I represent the first ward in the town of Greece. That has given me a tremendous insight working with state and sometimes even the federal folks, because remember the unfortunate thing with the lake water rising in 2017 and the disaster that created. We had to work with all levels of government, all law enforcement, to bring the efforts and the resources and support for those people who were damaged and devastated, quite frankly, by those high water levels. So, that's only one portion, though, of the 56.
Right.
And then, then you go into Hamlin and Hilton. You have to understand what they are dealing with, what burdens are out there, what are the issues that we need to help with out there. And then obviously in the city of Rochester, it's a mess right now. You've got to be following along and almost keep a scorecard like you would with the baseball playoffs right now as to who's playing and who's in and who's out. The vitriol that's going on within portions of government. We have to have leadership that says, listen, enough of this fighting. I mean, look at the county legislature and the folks that are representing all the areas that are within the 56. They got to get it together and say, let's lay down these differences of who's getting what job, and let's start doing the work that we were elected to do. And in the mayor's office, I mean, holy cow, they should install a revolving door because, it's who's leaving, who's coming in. It's fascinating to watch, but it's also sad to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this has been a really challenging time. Not only because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but because of what's been happening in this and other communities across the country. It's really been distressing, and it is a time when we need to pull together more than ever. So it's great to hear that's something that you're eager to do. So, what is the role of a senator? I'm assuming a senator goes to legislature meetings in Albany, and what does the role consist of, and how do you interact with people? And to some extent, I suppose I know. I'm being a little bit coy, but tell us how folks are going to be able to engage with you if you're elected, and what you're going to be doing in Albany.
See, there's the great phrase, all politics is local. Mm-hmm. And in the state Senate, you can operate in that fashion. I'm trying to succeed one of the biggest, if not the biggest name in elected officials here in Monroe County, and that's Joe Robach. Mm-hmm. And Senator Robach has been in that position for 20 years. He's always been available. And I think that's what a lot of public servants forget, is that the word servant is in there. You're there to serve. Mm-hmm. And, there's that old joke that we think Joe has cloned himself 18 different times because he's at everything. And that is what people need to see, that you're there, that you're mm-hmm. fighting for them. And his spot is more unique than any other in the 56, is more unique than any of the other districts because you encompass so much. And you're there to fight for us. You're there to fight for upstate. And, if this were to go towards someone who has a downstate political leaning and wants to agree with the governor and wants to agree with downstate legislators, we're in trouble. Because it's only because of him and Senator Funke that we've been able to stave off some of the attacks against upstate to appease those people that are downstate. You've really got to be cognizant of that as to who our leadership is here in upstate. And a state senator can do that, especially in the 56. But you're also there to represent not just the constituents, but the interests of everyday quality of life issues. So, here in the town of Greece, someone calls, I have a pothole. I have this issue going on. I have this going on. It might sound like a minuscule thing to other people, but that's a quality of life issue.
Sure is.
That as a town council person, you have to take care of. Yep. And there's the same attitude and work ethic you can bring to the state Senate. If someone calls you with whatever the issue is, you can say, you know what, I'll be on it, and I'll give you an answer by tomorrow. And you have to run it, as if each person is paying your paycheck, because they are.
Because they are.
Each vote is a potential supervisor or boss, if you will. And that's what we were raised growing up working at the restaurant at my grandfather's. You treat every customer as if they're signing your paycheck, because they are.
Yeah, I think that's that's something that matters not just in elected office, also in running a business or even running a chamber, which is every single person who comes to you is somebody that you want to treat with, the utmost of respect, and you want to get back to them quickly, and you want to make sure that they know that you care about them, and responding and following through. They're the mantra that many of us live by. So before I let you go, I just want to say, how would people get in touch with you if they're interested in learning more? I'm assuming there's a website?
Yes, there is. And that's barry4senate.com, and you can either use the numerical version of 4 or the word. And then you can also follow us on Facebook at Barry for State Senate. And that is really what I steer people towards, because then you can kind of follow along with us. I usually put 2 or 3 posts up a day, letting you know where we stand on many issues and letting you know what we're doing. people want to know who they're voting for. And, this year just feels so much more personalized because we're in the middle of a pandemic still. People aren't allowed to go to parades and fireman carnivals and other events where politicians are there waiting to meet and talk with people. Mm-hmm. And you can't do the typical door-to-door where you're ringing the doorbell saying, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, I'd like your vote." We rely on social media, and especially this year, because of those personal engagements are no longer there. So we have, everything out there, videos, people who are endorsing us. I've had a couple of great videos from Senator Robach on there, and people really feel like, okay, I know this guy. When they can hear your voice through video or they can read your posts, they follow along with you since March, and they feel part of the team. They feel engaged. And it's the best way to let them know, hey, I got this going on. Are you for it? Are you against it? Am I be a part of it? And that, to me, has been the biggest change of a political season with this year.
Well, that's great. So Barry for Senate, right?
Yep, .com, then Barry for State Senate on Facebook.
All right. David Michael Barry Jr., candidate for the 56th District of the New York State Senate. Thank you so much for joining us here today on Business Voice.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. You were just listening to David Michael Barry Jr., who is one of two candidates for the 56th District of the New York State Senate. The other is Jeremy Cooney. The Greece Regional Chamber of Commerce recently had an annual meeting and luncheon, and we invited both candidates for the 56th District to come and to present their visions and their ideas and to enter into a little dialogue with our members. We were delighted they could both join us. We invited both candidates to join us here today on Business Voice. Unfortunately, Jeremy Cooney was not able to be with us due to schedule conflicts. We're very happy David Michael Barry Jr. was able to join us, and we're looking forward to having Jeremy Cooney join us at a future show. I want also our listeners to know that the Chamber is nonpartisan and that we are not endorsing either candidate. Don't go away. Coming up next, we have two different guests that are going to come and talk to us about Plan 2014, the rising waters of Lake Ontario, something that was actually just mentioned in the last segment, so don't turn that dial.
WYSL Avon Rochester.
The loss of a loved one can be an overwhelming time of hectic activity and high emotion. Remembering and celebrating the lives of those who have passed is important and fulfilling. A meaningful farewell, focusing on their life story, can help with healing. Some families turn to the clergy at their church to capture the essence of a person's life. However, those who may not be connected with the church may worry there is no one to fulfill this important role. At Bartolomeo and Parado, we believe that a life remembered lives on. One of our trained funeral celebrants can help you thoughtfully design and organize your loved one's treasured memories and ensure that the story of their life is not forgotten. Discover how you can create a meaningful farewell. Visit Bartolomeo.com or call us today at 585-720-6000.
If you're looking to market and grow your business, make new business connections, and give back to the community in a meaningful way, consider joining the Greece Regional Chamber of Commerce. We're the largest suburban chamber in Monroe County, and we offer networking, education, marketing, insurance, and advocacy. You do not need to live or work in Greece to join. Our members come from throughout the region. In short, we're better together, and together, we're moving business forward. Visit greecechamber.org or call 585-227-7272 to join today.
At Well Now Urgent Care, we know access to safe, reliable care is important now more than ever. That's why we're taking convenient care to another level. Our center on Dewey Avenue is now open 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. with new safety standards in place. So don't delay care. We are open, safe, and ready to see you. Visit wellnow.com to check in online or walk in to one of our nearby locations in Irondequoit, Gates, and Fairport.
WYSL.
Welcome back. You're listening to Business Voice, a program of the Greece Regional Chamber of Commerce, sponsored by Bartolomeo and Parado Funeral Home. I'm your host, Sarah Lentini, and also the president and CEO of the Greece Regional Chamber. It's my great pleasure to welcome our next guest, Bernie Gigas, who is a member of the Public Advisory Group to the Great Lakes Adaptive Management Committee. That's quite a mouthful. Welcome, Bernie.
Yeah, hello, Sarah.
So, what is the public advisory group to the Great Lakes Adaptive Management Committee? Let's give our listeners a little bit of context.
Sure, it is indeed a mouthful. As you know, the Great Lakes are being managed by the International Joint Commission out of Ottawa and Washington. And the technical team that really looks after, in particular, Plan 2014 on Lake Ontario is called the Great Lakes Adaptive Management Committee. And because of the flooding that we had in Lake Ontario in 2017 and 19, the IJC formed a public advisory group that provides data, input, feedback to the GLAM, Great Lakes Adaptive Management Committee, to help them really improve the plan, I suppose.
Well, so you're sitting on an advisory group that the International Joint Commission has formed in order to help them with all sorts of expertise, I imagine. And before we talk about that, I just want to go back to what the IJC is, because for some people this may be very familiar territory. For others who are listening, it may be brand new information. So the International Joint Commission, as you were saying, is a group that is made up of Canadian representatives and U.S. representatives, correct?
Yes. So in 1909, the U.S. and Canada entered into a treaty called the Boundary Waters Treaty. And that treaty covers all interboundary waters between Canada and the U.S., between the East Coast and the West Coast. So it's a pretty long line.
Sure is. Yeah, and it was pardon me, Bernie, it was 1909, is that what you said, the year?
That is correct, yes.
Okay,
yep.
The
And
original
that
year.
treaty actually is the basis of the International Joint Commission. They specifically say we will form this commission to handle.
And so there's certainly been news. There've been news items, and anybody who lives along the line, the shoreline of Lake Ontario is, it would have to be truly under a rock not to know there was an issue. But Plan 2014 was a plan that the International Joint Commission had enacted that changed the water level of the St. Lawrence Seaway in Lake Ontario, correct? Or help me with this.
Yeah, not quite.
Okay.
I think a lot of people will say that, but that's not actually quite correct.
Okay.
So the plan, the old plan, the new plan, really just dictate how much water gets let out, which then people say, well, that's controlling the level. No, it influences the level.
Oh.
So to blame Plan 2014 well, you changed the rules and therefore the water came up is really not actually quite correct.
Okay.
The flooding, we've had a lot of water in the system, and that needs to be managed. But my real complaint with Plan 2014 is that it doesn't handle high water situations fairly between upstream, that's us on Lake Ontario, downstream, that's Montreal and below, and shipping. It just doesn't balance the pain equally. So that's really the complaint that we have on Lake Ontario on both the U.S. and Canadian side, and really, quite frankly, the river all the way through Cornwall.
Okay, so Plan 2014 may have some value, may have some things to recommend it, but there are some things that you think might need to be tweaked. Does that sound fair?
From a personal perspective, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think Plan 2014 fundamentally is okay, but the devil is always in the details. Mm-hmm. So we've had additional flooding because, in my personal opinion, and that's part of the discussion on the public advisory group, I don't think the rules are set evenly, and that's what I want to change.
I see. Yeah. Let's talk a little about your background, because you're not on the advisory group just because. You're on the advisory group because you have some very specific expertise, correct? You're a PE, a professional engineer?
Yeah, so my background is chemical engineering bachelor's at the University of Rochester and a master's in mechanical engineering emphasis on fluid dynamics from RIT. And I've worked in fluid dynamics my entire career. I am a professional engineer in the state of New York, and I got into the data set pretty heavily, invited myself to a few meetings with the IJC and the Army Corps of Engineers, and left a positive impression.
Hmm. And are you also what's called a hydrologist?
I am not. So hydrology is a little bit different. Hydrology is really a subset of fluid dynamics. I can understand hydrology. The analysis work that I do is fundamentally hydrology, but I am not technically I'm not a hydrologist.
A hydrologist per se, but you are an expert in fluid dynamics.
Yes, and I'm certainly qualified to talk about.
I was going to say it sounds pretty relevant. Engineering and fluid dynamics sound very relevant, and I heard you say you spent your entire life focused on fluid dynamics. Yes.
No, all of it. Yep, all 36 years of my career have all been fluid dynamics.
I imagine there aren't too many people that have spent that much time studying fluid dynamics in this region.
Yeah, no, there are not. Especially when you get into the computational portion of it. No, there's a lot of people that really kind of run from it. I've always enjoyed math, and I've always enjoyed fluids, and so we moved up to the lake, found the problems, and I just data set and started analyzing. Yeah. So that's how I wound up on the PhD.
Yeah. So what is happening moving forward then? If there's it sounds as though maybe there's some recognition at this point that not everybody is happy, right? And sometimes, is this one of those situations where someone's always going to be unhappy, or is this a situation where many more parts of this partnership can be happy, many more aspects of the shorelines on both sides can be happy? What's being done about that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you. There's always going to be somebody unhappy with the way the water is managed, and I think that's the nature of the beast. I think we can do better. I think we can do a little better. I don't think we can avoid all flooding, and that's like the basic tenet of what I present. Is you can't avoid all flooding. You can share the pain equally, and there's definitely a recognition on the part of the IJC and the board, which are the people that really set the rules. And Bill Reilich from Greece is part of that board. There's definitely recognition that there's an issue and that something needs to be done, and the communities have done a remarkably good job of speaking up and having their voices heard, and that has led to some results already. So if I take a look at how the water flow has been managed as of late, as of June of last year, I'm very pleased and quite proud of the way that that's been done. I think that's been effective. I think we want to get that codified so that becomes the standard as opposed to the exception. It should require conversation. And if we do that, I think we can make some progress here. So I'm optimistic that this is not a waste of everybody's time.
That's very good news. I know many people who own businesses and or who live along the lakes of the shores of Lake Ontario that have been quite unhappy, been doing a whole lot of bailing water and putting out sandbags and anything that could make the extremes not the mode and not the norm would be very welcomed. So what is the role of the general public in this? Is there a role, and is there a place that people can go, a website they could go to if they wanted to participate? Is this a democratic process?
Well, it's not democratic because the International Joint Commission is essentially a protected entity because it's a binational organization, international organization. However, they are not blind or deaf. So they see the flooding. They certainly hear people's complaints and hear people's commentary. They're human as well, right? And they're trying to do what they can. But I think, in as much as the squeaky wheel gets the grease, this is certainly not any different. And if we have a problem, I think it's important that the public make themselves known. And there are a number of shoreline constituency groups, grassroots groups, that are trying to collect people's voices to make sure that we're heard, not just to the IJC, but also to government level. So that's local, state, and federal. And the more we speak up in a collective and consistent voice, as members of the public, I think the more we have a chance of actually having a satisfactory result for us.
Right. Even just people being aware of what's happening and asking what the progress is and showing that they're involved is probably very useful. Is there any? You mentioned a number of groups, and is there one that stands out among all of them, or a particular website that's a good place to start, or where should we send people, Bernie?
I'm going to back off on that just because I need to hold, my reputation as an independent, as a technical independent. But the groups I mentioned are all pretty effective. They've all been heard from, and there's others. There's a number of them, but I'm not going to recommend a specific one. Okay,
terrific. That's fair enough, and I actually appreciate your being clear about that. And I think, if people at least Google International Joint Commission, right, Plan 2014, some things should come up, I imagine, right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it's not about. That's just sort of the topic to get people started.
Yep.
Bernie Gigas, we so appreciate your joining us here today on Business Voice. Bernie Gigas, member of the Public Advisory Group to the Great Lakes Adaptive Management Committee, ultimately providing advice on a topic and in an area that is of great concern to anybody who is near the Lake Ontario shoreline, but ultimately should be of interest and concern to all of us because the quality of the living experience in one part of this community definitely impacts the rest, if I may say so. So, Bernie, thank you so much for joining us here today on Business Voice.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it, the time, and the visibility matters. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. We're now going to turn our attention to another person who's joining us here today to talk about Plan 2014 and the rising water levels on Lake Ontario and what it all means. And she's got a slightly different perspective. Jessica Stone is a Washington, D.C.-based consultant to Save Our SOTUS and the Coalition to Protect the newly formed Great Lakes. Welcome, Jessica.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Jessica, you're a Washington, D.C.-based consultant, but you're originally from the Rochester area, or at least you spent some part of your career here, right?
That's right. Yeah, I spent 3 years there in the early 2000s.
Yeah, terrific. So
you
know the region.
well and had previously. And I know the Upper Great Lakes as well, having grown up part of my life in Michigan.
Terrific. And you're involved with Save Our SOTUS. So tell us a little bit about Save Our SOTUS and the role that it's playing and then that you're playing as a consultant.
So Save Our SOTUS is based in SOTUS Point and works on bay issues, but also has become part of a broader coalition of Lake Ontario shoreline groups working on behalf of people who live and work and play along the lake, basically anybody who loves Lake Ontario and uses it regularly and is concerned about the flooding issue. Save Our SOTUS has partnered with a group on the eastern side of the lake, closer to Syracuse, called LOSRA, Lake Ontario St. Lawrence River Alliance, and they've also partnered with a Canadian group called United Shoreline Ontario. And I'm working with them to broaden that coalition even further with Upper Great Lakes riparian organizations so that we can make a more compelling case to Congress here in Washington about the need to balance the priorities of homeowners and property owners on the lake with the interests of hydroelectricity and shipping, both of whom have very active lobbies here in Washington.
And are these sort of the various interests with respect to this issue? Does shipping have sort of one perspective? Does hydroelectric have another? And then does the resident along Lake Ontario have yet a third?
Absolutely, and there's probably more interest even than that. But those are some of the primary groups, and I think the reason that we formed the Coalition to Protect the Great Lakes Shorelines as an umbrella organization for creating a bigger voice for riparians is that, which is the nomenclature for people who live on the lake or own property on the lakes. These are people who don't have as big of a voice in Washington for their interests. The cities, the municipalities have lobbying organizations. In fact, we are working with them to get better understanding of the funding needs of cities that are being impacted along the Great Lakes and are encouraging all the elected representatives of the towns and cities along the lakes to fill out the GLSL Cities survey to that effect. But we also need to catalog the needs of homeowners. And I know the people on Lake Ontario are much more familiar with advocating for their issues probably than the people on the Upper Great Lakes. So there's something that you all have to offer the people who are just now coming to understand that they're going to lose their homes and property that's been in their families for generations, potentially, because of the erosion issues that are happening from the high water in the Upper Great Lakes, something that, while it hasn't been erosion, it's been flooding, has certainly been something top of mind for people in the Rochester area for the last 2 to 3 years. So
let's tell people, because not everybody lives on the shores of Lake Ontario, what homeowners along the lakeshore have been experiencing. Is the flooding really that bad that people are going to lose their homes? And how much of an impact, how big a scale of this impact, is this impact?
Well, certainly this year was a year when you could argue that the water was, I think, 5 inches above historic norms, but that's been basically, we feel like we've dodged a bullet in terms of the lake level this year. As you know, in 2017 and 2019, the lake waters were much higher. People were getting flooded. Communities like Sodas Point were underwater. Their sewers, their sort of public utilities were impacted, and homeowners have had to raise their houses, have had to build bigger and badder break walls and go through all the enormity of the permitting process to do that. And as you may also know, that New York State has kicked in some funds, which have very quickly tapped out to help homeowners do that work. But we don't see this just as a need for funds, although that is a big part of it. We also see this as a need for a broader, bigger voice for the people who live on the lakes. These lakes are largely inhabited by residential homes, not just cities, and they're a big part of people's recreational lives. And I think that's one of the biggest selling points for living in the Rochester area. There's a lot of great qualities about Rochester, music, art, education, but the proximity to one of the natural wonders is certainly high up there on the list.
Mm-hmm. So you've built a voice, you've built a coalition, you've partnered with other coalitions. You want to get Congress's ear. Have you gotten Congress's ear at all to date? How are things progressing, and what do you anticipate happening as you build this coalition to be even larger?
Well, we've certainly had a good interaction with Senator Schumer's office, and we're leaning heavily on some of his staff members to broaden the tent with respect to some of the other Senate Democrats. Senator Debbie Stabenow of Michigan is a great advocate for the Great Lakes. Senator Durbin of Illinois is from the Chicago area, and someone we also want to get further involved. Obviously, there are very huge priorities in front of Congress. I mean, just today we're following the stimulus talks, and there's a pending Supreme Court nomination. So we have to fight hard to cut through the noise, but we really think that a Great Lakes riparian voice will accomplish that. Some of the most powerful elected representatives in all of Congress come from the Great Lakes, and harnessing their power on behalf of riparians to both bring funds and ease regulation on permitting in particular is something that we really would like to do for not only Lake Ontario residents and people that live near Lake Ontario, but also the broader Great Lakes at large.
And just to go back to what you mentioned earlier, you mentioned two very large potential arenas, right? Two very potentially powerful arenas, one being hydroelectric power and the other being shipping. So if we distill this down to something very simple, is it as simple as higher water levels work better for hydroelectric power and for shipping and less well for a resident that's going to experience flooding? Or is it even more complicated than that?
I wish it was that simple. I'm not a hydrologist or an engineer, as Bernie Gigas is. And what I've come to understand is that unfortunately, it's not that simple, and that's why we're seeking a balanced solution. So you talked to Bernie about the technical way to achieve that. We're looking to basically make sure there's a table at which riparians have a voice.
Okay.
And we just want there to be a more powerful, united voice for riparians, because high water is not good for people that live right along the shores. That's not to say that it's good for navigation for shipping. We've seen the levels get so high on some of the Great Lakes that actually there's been some complaints from shipping, and we see an opening there to actually see eye to eye with shipping, which doesn't happen too often. As you know, particularly on Lake Ontario, we've had to ask the shipping industry to delay their season in order to let more water out. So, yes, certainly there's we can be at odds with shipping as riparians, but there are also instances where high water is actually not good for anyone.
So I can see that it is a complex issue, and it sounds as though even if your group had the ear of Congress, it might be tricky to know exactly what to ask for, because part of what I'm hearing is it's also tricky to figure out what's needed. Is that a fair assessment?
That's why we're trying to get unity of message and purpose. And yes, in terms of a technical solution, there's not a strong feeling among our group that a technical solution is something Congress can achieve. Obviously, the IJC is an international body. Congress controls the purse strings only so far and certainly controls access to the State Department. But we need to have two paths for this, which is why we support the technical solutions that Bernie Gigas has advocated for in terms of the expedited review of Plan 2014. That may give us a more immediate relief than congressional stimulus or congressional action, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't pursue both paths at the same time.
Got it. In case you're just joining us, you're listening to Business Voice, a program of the Greece Regional Chamber of Commerce, sponsored by Bartolomeo and Parado Funeral Home. I'm Sarah Lentini, your host. I'm also the president and CEO of the Greece Regional Chamber, and I'm delighted to be talking with Jessica Stone, a Washington, D.C.-based consultant to Save Our SOTUS and the Coalition to Protect the Newly Formed Great Lakes. And as you've been hearing, this is not a simple issue. It involves, not only two countries, but also lots of different potential needs and interests that we all share. And there isn't one simple solution, but we do need to be working together. So if people are interested in this issue, which I think you already rightly mentioned, should be of interest to everybody, not just those of us with property on the shoreline, because ultimately this becomes the brand of the region, right? Having great recreational areas and water areas. Where should people turn? Where can we send them, Jessica?
I'd love to have you go to saveoursotus.com and check out our website concerning the special legal fund that we've created to fund this effort. We'd also love for you to participate in our email campaign to the control board, where we're advocating specifically for the technical solution that Bernie Gigas has put together. And we'd love to have you get more broadly involved in voicing what you need and helping us catalog the scale of the need along Lake Ontario so that we have numbers to put with our asks for the U.S. Congress.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Jessica Stone, from Consultant to Save Our SOTUS, thank you so much for joining us here today on Business Voice.
Pleasure.
That pretty much wraps it up for us here today on Business Voice, a program of the Greece Regional Chamber of Commerce, sponsored by Bartolomeo and Parado Funeral Home. I'm Sarah Lentini, your host. I'm also the president and CEO of the Chamber. I do want to make one clarification, one correction. My one guest, Jessica Stone, who is a Washington, D.C.-based consultant. She is a consultant to Save Our SOTUS and the Coalition to Protect the Newly Formed Great Lakes Shorelines. I neglected to mention shorelines when I introduced her, so please note that correction. We thank Jessica Stone for joining us, Bernie Gigas for joining us, David Michael Berry Jr. for joining us, and of course, Dr. Adina Jucan of Adena Family Dentist for joining us here today. If you're looking for any more information about what we have on tap, please do visit greecechamber.org. That's greecechamber.org. We have tons of events, lots of opportunities, not just for our members, but for the general public. Thanks so much for joining us here today on Business Voice.
You've been listening to Business Voice. The Greece Regional Chamber of Commerce serves businesses, nonprofits, and individuals throughout the region, focusing on promoting economic and community development and serving as the voice for business. The Chamber offers networking, education, advocacy, community events, and business services. It serves as an important platform for business leaders and citizens to come together in support of common goals.